Sam. Thank you all for being here. I assume you can see my opening slide. Show you the agenda in just a second. Steve Kramer, business librarian. General audience today, though, no business focus, except that I do like looking at the nature of these companies that produce these tools. Just one slide about that. This is a fairly ambitious agenda for 30 minutes. That is totally my fault. It was a suggestion to talk about this topic. Last time I was talking about AI, and I came up with this. So if it's rushed, I apologize, but welcome engagement with you all one-on-one or whatever afterwards. So if we don't get to your favorite thing, let me know. We can talk about it afterwards. Welcome questions anytime. I do have chat open in a different window than my slides, so I can see chats. I also have a lot of notes, including some pre-prepared searches in my notepad file on my other window. So if you see me like looking over here, I'm looking for something to cut and paste. So I'll be right back to the main window and main camera view after that. Right, and thank you all for being here. So here's the agenda. I have 6 slides covering items 1 through 4 on this agenda. So introduction, 6 slides, and then we'll do some demonstrations. So 1 through 3, I should say. 4, I do have, as you can see, a lot of tabs open already, different products. Sometimes some of these tools take a few minutes to do their work. They do deep research and it takes some time. And therefore I've done some pre-searching to facilitate showing you examples without just waiting and watching for the screen to eventually upload. So I do have some things ready to go. 1 slide on number 5, that's the new hot topic, and then 1 slide for number 6, my conclusions, recommendations, and then Q&A. Questions welcome anytime, microphone or chat, but of course you can see here we will also end with time to talk about things as well. I do talk fast. I may have done so already, probably have. I'm sorry. If I'm not communicating clearly, please let me know. I will encourage you to let me know, and then I can do better and repeat myself or slow down. Okay? Otherwise, let's get going. So big picture, I won't read all this to you, but it's good, I think, to look at all the different options we now have to do academic literature searching, including our databases that we have been using ever since they were CD-ROMs, that can be both association-based like MLA or PsycInfo, which is APA Center, as many of you know, or it could be aggregators like EBSCO, ProQuest, or Web of Science, Scopus. And I put those last 2 in gray brackets italicized to indicate that we don't pay for those right now due to big budget cuts we've had and how expensive those products are, Web of Science, Scopus. I may refer to them though, because we have some new alternative products that are in some ways might be better, or at least pretty competitive with what those products do. Publisher websites, of course, I'm going to allude to that because that is part of the story here, is what kind of content do these tools have access to when they run their searches and do their analysis. We have our own personal collections, Zotero EndNote. We have the free tools, including Semantic Scholar and OpenAlex. My colleague Leah, who's in the room, thank you, Leah, did a wonderful talk just for librarians on OpenAlex. Some of what I learned from Leah will show you today. Although any mistakes I make, it's my fault, not her fault too. And then the new tools, which is the focus today, Site Consensus, I'm going to show you, could dig deeper, or Research Rabbit, I'm going to show you that as well. There are a lot of these out there. There's like 5 or 6 that are dominant. We'll come back to that list. And the newest thing I alluded to, there's the MCP module context protocols, where you connect a collection of articles, such as from Cite or from PubMed in the future, to a commercial chatbot, such as Copilot or Claude or ChatGPT, and then use its own interface and your own agents you set up to access them. And I can show you that briefly. I started working with this yesterday when I hooked up ChatGPT to my Cite account. And now I can use that interface to interact with Cite's content. But this is the hot new thing. Currently it takes some work to set up. Some of the options take a lot of programming that I can't do. But I'm going to mention that near the end. Okay, that's our agenda. And moving deeper. So here's today's focus. And notice I have sort of 3 clusters here. But first, the bullet points, these are mostly private companies. They are funded partly by venture capital. So they got some investment money. So they hope to make money and pay back their investors. Revenue strategies tend to be subscriptions, either individual or institutional. Some of them might also do licensing partnerships. And I do think we need to consider that these are startup companies trying to become sustainable, pay their employees, have health care for their employees, et cetera. And we can't ignore that when it comes to how they work and how quickly the free usage becomes runs out. Let me rephrase it. How quickly like elicit's a good example of this. You can't do a whole lot of elicit for free. At some point, you have to pay to get like downloads or just to do another search because you use up your searches for the day that are free. So you'll see that, and that's why, because they are trying to be sustainable and they're trying to pay their workers, etc. Okay, 3 clusters there. I'm going to kind of lump the top 5 together, site through SciSpace, that first box. Somewhat related, mostly related kind of products. I'm going to show you at least 2 of those. If we have time, we'll dig deeper. Another category I mentioned when I promoted this webinar include ResearchRabbit, the mapping tools where you see citation linkages visually. And I'll show you examples of that. I kind of regret that now because they're not really AI tools. ResearchRabbit has a new beta AI, prompt engineering example where it's doing AI-centered searching, but it's not really an AI tool. The core functionality of these tools, ResearchRabbit, LitMaps, Connected Papers, is not AI-centered, but there may be an AI search to do kind of conceptual searching. I'll show you that example of that too. But they're interesting, they're new, and they're easy to demonstrate. So I'm going to show you examples of this too. And then I had NotebookLM in the bottom, right? Some of you might know that NotebookLM is not really a search tool. It does have a new, very small, discrete search engine option. But largely, as many of you know, NotebookLM, you upload a collection of papers or other documents and it analyzes them. So it's worth noting, it's really useful, right? It's from Google. So Gemini is what's probably running its algorithms in terms of the large language model searching it does, but not really a search tool. So I'm not going to cover NotebookLM today, but if you haven't tried it already, I recommend you look into it. It's a really interesting tool. All right. So what exactly are these things searching? And by these things, I'm referring to the site box up here with the 5 and also ResearchRabbit through Connected Papers. So most of them are using 2 main sources of articles, Semantic Scholar and OpenAlex. Each of them covers about 20 million citations, 20 million citations. The numbers vary a bit. I've seen 24 million. You can count things differently. Like PubMed, it's hard to tell how much PubMed covers because you see quotes like 50 million, like there aren't 50 million medical science articles yet. So that can be kind of iffy, but largely 20 million is a good number to provide you a comparison. Look at the footnote at the bottom. Google Scholar about the same size, but our usual tools, ProQuest EBSCO, Scopus, Web of Science are much, much smaller. And I have a slide coming up, about the impact of searching such a huge collection of content. Archive, some of you may know about that, is a largely natural science preprint server run by Cornell University, also in the mix, and PubMed too, but Archive and PubMed are covered by OpenAlex and Semantic Scholar. So these overlap a little bit too. Sometimes publishers are included as well. And you can see my box here on the right side. I work with Cite with Morgan Robinson from the UNCG Business School. So know Cite pretty well. Cite uses Semantic Scholar, but also they have deals with almost all the major publishers to get the full text, allow them to do citation analysis that otherwise would not be doable, except for, as you can see there, Elsevier and Springer Nature, which is worth noting because Elsevier, as you know, is one of the biggest publishers out there. Given there's now money through metadata, given that metadata now has value, monetary value, Elsevier and Springer Nature decide not to share their stuff anymore. So one consequence of that is that some of these tools, including Semantic Scholar and OpenAlex, don't always represent articles from Elsevier journals and Springer Nature journals as well because they don't have full text coverage because they decide not to do that. So that'll come up again in a second. But interesting business decision that it comes up regarding that we now have value in simply looking at metadata as well as the actual article.
Okay. Steve, Karen? Did you see Karen's question?
Yep. They are peer reviewed. Actually, OpenAlex, for example, I'm going to go back to the good training that my colleague Leah gave us last week, is extremely verified data. They're using Crossref, that's one word, Crossref, which is one of the most important open DOI link servers, DOI digital object identifiers, a vital tool to help us run journals access across all these different platforms. And so the predatory journals should not be there. It is a very valued and trustworthy collection of articles. I can say that. Also, I want to just notice they don't hallucinate, right? Because they're using this corpus of content. They're not generating citations from an open web search the way the usual commercial LLMs do this. So that may come up again too. Hope that was a good answer. Okay, good. All right. Okay. One aspect of this that's worth noting, actually 3 of them, sorry, consequences. This is a huge collection of articles to find. That means obscure journals and often, frankly, lower quality journals and articles will show up. You're not just seeing the big publishers, Elsevier, Springer, Sage, Emerald, Taylor and Francis. Usually when you search a database, those are the ones in the mix. The big Anglo-American, Dutch because Elsevier is in Amsterdam, publishers. So you're seeing a much deeper set of articles, Global South, other countries producing English language articles come up too. It's not just the big publishers, and that's often different for us, and that can impact what you see. Some of the tools, though, do allow you to filter it out. Say, I only want to see the top journals. I only want to see Quad 1 or CWTS. I had to look this up. I have notes here. Center for Science and Teaching Studies. It's in New Zealand. They basically have a list of all the Web of Science covered journals, and you can often limit search just to that kind of content. If you don't want to see the less famous and the non-top publisher journals. And then number 2 there, some of the tools emphasize citation counts, some of them don't. If citation counts are not emphasized in the rankings or re-rankings, we'll get into re-rankings, then you'll see many newer articles up front. However, many of us are used to Google Scholar. Google Scholar, as you all know, is a tool that is one of the older tools that provides citation counts. And it favors citation counts in its ranking algorithms. Therefore, Google Scholar often gives you the older, highly cited articles up front, in the first 10 or 20 hits. Some of these tools don't do that, and therefore you get new articles that aren't necessarily cited much yet because they're new, right? So that's something to consider. And finally, this may come up again too. These tools, because they're doing semantic conceptual searching, drastically expanded Boolean searching that can generate different Boolean strings each time, the searches may not be reproducible. If you're doing systematic reviews, other kinds of meta reviews, meta literature searching, you don't necessarily want to do semantic searching for that. You want to do classic Boolean searching where you only have a set of keywords that you can reproduce in your article and everyone gets the same results when you search it. So that's a place of growth opportunity in these products. Largely though, you should not be using semantic searching to do systematic review searching because of the lack of reproducibility. Okay, looking at Leah's notes real quick. And Leah notes, yeah, there's more than just articles in OpenAlex. And it does have many filters. I'll show you this since I've got OpenAlex page open for what you get into. Okay. And two more slides, sorry, before we get into some examples. It might seem dry, but this matters. Usually abstracts are searched by these products. Some of them, particularly if they're open access, have full text access, meaning citations are in the mix. Who's citing whom, who have you cited, etc. Or there are deals, like Cite, as I mentioned again, second time, on the right side has deals with most of the big publishers where they can get to the full text and do analysis of all the words in the article plus citations that are there. So that's sometimes also available through the search engine. And that's why this matters. Sometimes you only have abstract, sometimes you have full text. You, of course, in theory, for semantic searching particularly, have better access and better results. In better rankings, we need to talk about rankings more. I do, at least, in this talk today. Then you have better results. But that's an issue. And again, Elsevier and Springer Nature pulling out their content from OpenAlex and not doing deals with these search engines to limit your access to certain things. It is because they do their own products, they have their own way of making money from these products. And therefore that can limit your ability to find good Elsevier articles and Springer Nature articles using these tools. That's an ongoing issue. Okay, last slide before we do some demonstrations. And sorry, a long list, apologize. So what do these do? I'll show you examples of most of these, and I won't read all this to you, I promise. And some of this is also already available in our library databases, as I showed in my last webinar, including numbers 1 through 4. But these tools do all these different things. Re-rankings number 2 I mentioned matters because you'll see an example where you can do a quick search, get like 25 or 30 or 50 top hits, then do a deep search re-ranking of those top 25 or 35 or 50 hits and generate a relevancy list from that. So 2-step rankings, that's an emerging trend that seems to be an effective way to do this, for example. And then 6 and 7 there, that is the consensus site featured content category where it gives you, I'll have examples of this setup, where you'll see examples of, are we supporting is it support citation? Is it contradicting? It's not just, okay, sorry, let me slow down. It's good to know an article has 100 citations to it, right? It's been cited 100 times. Boom, you're done. That's Scopus, that's Web of Science, also OpenAlex level content. However, how many of those citations are meaningful, are content specific, are supporting or negative citations, or just mentioning it without much context? That is the semantic level of support of citation analysis. So going beyond just here's the number, boom, 125, 6. Well, that's fine, but how are they used? How are they cited? What's the context for citing these articles? That's what these tools get into. Consensus and Cite are examples of that, and you'll see that in my examples. All right, I'm going to look at chat real quick before we get into some examples. That ends my introduction. Any questions, comments so far? I know I covered a lot already. And thank you for the comments from Karen and Leah. All right, let me have a quick sip of water, and then we're going to jump in. I'm going to show you four quickly, kind of context, and also the mapping tools, but then we're going to dump deeper into consensus, into Cite. Can do a couple more if we have time. We'll see. And looking at the clock, and also have my MCP slide to show you recommendations as well, so I won't forget about that. All right. So this is OpenAlex, and just to save time, I came in and did a search already. It favors a classic Boolean keyword searching. So here's my Boolean search. There is actually a new beta semantic search that could be worth keeping your eyes on. And just the point is here's just one of the big sources of most of these products. So the 240 plus million articles, other things. You can see on the right side these different facets showing you different metadata categories for the hits we have here. Number of citations are here, 117 for this first article. And I can click on it and, of course, click on all the things they have cited. This article cited 26 articles, and also since 2018, this article cited 117 times. And there we go. And I can download this to Cite or download it to a spreadsheet if you want to as well. Point here is we all should know like where the articles are getting where the databases are getting articles from. OpenAlex is one of those sources. And by the way, I have links for everything I mentioned today ready to go. I think when we get to the general discussion time, I will put all those links in the chat. Okay. Again, sorry, super fast, but just it's good to know where things come from. Notice, as Leah pointed out, all the different filters here. It's a filter-rich tool, including some additional ones. A lot of the metadata here, including I mentioned, I only want to look at the top articles, the top journals, so I don't want all the obscure stuff. Here's one example of that. This is the Center for Science Technology Studies course summary resources list corresponding to Web of Science. And you can see that we'll get fewer hits this way. Okay, thank you, Sam. Karen, yeah, you can download, usually it's listed as, here, let me show an example. Download works, choices of, and this is weird, like you would think OpenAlex being open would use Zotero, not EndNote. EndNote's a Clarivate product, Clarivate, which owns Web of Science and ProQuest. But EndNote would be RIS feed, RIS download format, which you can easily upload into Zotero or EndNote, or just use a spreadsheet as well. Okay, thank you for asking me, you're welcome. Okay, and Semantic Scholar. Semantic searching, obviously, so I don't need to use and or and all that mess. I just typed in my 3 words here. I may not be able to say this right, even though I've seen videos about it. That's why I think it's, this is the interstellar cigar-shaped product that flew through the solar system a while ago. UMA composition origin. But again, main point here is articles with citations attached. So 38 cites. Somehow they ranked 4 highly influential citations, probably because of citation behavior. So there we go. And click on any article, and then you can see citations. My search there we go. May have timed out. I did this like an hour ago. Citations, it has citations, articles it has been cited by. Download options are here as well. Note, by the way, a little Cite button on the far right. That's because I have a Cite plugin that's independent of this database, so maybe ignore that for now. And like ProQuest and JSTOR do, if you're using those products, those library products, you can also interview the paper. So ask the paper, what methods did you use? How did you do your study to determine the rocky and icy composition of this interstellar object, etc. So you can interview the paper because it has either open access connections to it and has a PDF, and or maybe, I don't think actually Semantic Scholar does publisher deals, but maybe they've got a deal with the publisher of this journal from the Royal Astronomy Society. So again, OpenAlex and Semantic Scholar to the course sources for this content. And you can search these too, as you saw. I mean, they're useful just on their own, even though they're not the typical tools we talk about when we get into this. Okay, so I continue to go past, apologize. Connected papers, one of the two mapping tools I'm going to show you super fast. They give you some examples up front, so that's easy. I'm going to use them too. Little help here. The larger the circle, the more sites it has. The color represents years. The darker the color, the newer it is. You can see light color like 63 versus much more recent 2017, for example, in this default search they did. So, you can discuss or think about how useful this is to you or your students or your work you do. But a nice way to see connections of articles linking to other articles. You type in a seed article or a keyword search and pick a seed article, they call it, and then see how the branches go forward and back. One other example, Research Rabbit, this is one you pay for. I did a seed search already for this article. You can see over here on the right, direct evidence for microbial derived soil organic matter, etc., and who it's linking to. In this case, the more citations go up. So there are a couple of kind of offshoot links here to general studies of how to use R, programming language for environmental sciences, and those are massively cited, but otherwise, not really central to this topic. On the other hand, the x-axis is dates. So 2019, 2021, we go to the left side, 2011, 26. So that's one of the mapping tools. And LitMaps is similar. LitMaps purchased Research Rabbit last year. At some point, I think they'll probably become one product or have very similar technology between the two. But those are the mapping tools. And again, not really AI centered. This is not using AI to do this citation analysis, but there may be a AI search, a conceptual search, not just a Boolean search for some of these products. And that's somewhat related to today's topic. Okay, doing okay? I know this is fast, sorry, but you all can explore these on your own if you like. All right, this is CITE, C-I-T-E. Business School pays for it here, and I'm one of the administrators. And it has both a traditional Boolean search as well as an AI assistant. And this time I'm going to show you the search from scratch, because that way you get a full flavor of this. So I can search, you've seen this already. Boolean searches are pretty quick. It's doing index, lexical searching. And you have citations down here. And above that, the context. So here's where the words came up. Other thing that's different here, I'm going to zoom in a little bit too. Let me find another example. Yeah, this one's good. This is the special sauce here. This is a database that analyzes or tries to analyze the meaning and nature and context of citations. Not just how many sites do you have, 120, that's the answer, right? But also 4 of them are confirming or supporting, I should say. 72 just mention it, not really supporting it or just kind of think, oh, this exists, probably literature review citation. If there was a disagreement, a contrasting citation that would be labeled to. I haven't seen too many of those for this astronomy article. If you do some other topics, medical sciences, social sciences, I have a social science topic I'm going to do next, you'll see more of this contrasting citations. But the attempt to give you some context and meaning behind the citation numbers there. You can, of course, download this if you wanted to. On the other hand, there's also the AI tool here. And I'm going to change topics. I've got my search ready to go and my notes here. Let's ask it a question. The social media usage by adolescents result in increased levels of depression and anxiety. Notice I'm not doing Boolean. No, it's natural language. It's human talking, human writing at least here. We're going to go. I need to show you the settings too. Got to do that, but we'll let it run first. And this takes a little bit, right? So this is not unusual. To wait a little bit. One of these tools, I think it's Elicit, will actually tell you, I'll email you when we're done. And 5 minutes later, you get an email saying we're done, we're ready, come back and look at us. And you go back to that web browser tab and there you go. It's still running. This tool does re-ranking. It first does a search and maybe gets top 100 or 200 hits. Then it identifies the top articles from that second set. So it first does a basic search. Then it does a really deep search, which is doing now, actually right now. That's why it's taking so long. A deep research tool to see how this is working. I see it's already 12:27, sorry. So we may have to wrap it up briefly for this, after this. This is why, by the way, I have reset searches done otherwise, including a consensus here, which is I'm going to show you quickly next. But you can see we're getting an answer to the question. This is the controversial / most interesting part of these tools, is that it's trying to give you an answer, not just give you citations, although those will be available too on the side here. You'll see that. We'll see both the hits we get and also tell you what Boolean it came up with. And I'll show you that once it's done running. Hopefully that will be done in just a minute. It's still generating this, so I don't really want to go ahead too quickly. It'll do a final set of formatting. There we go. Okay. Frankly, I'm not sure what fact-checking 7 verified means. These are among the top hits, and it did a deep search of them and analysis of their citations. I think that's what that means largely. So see executive summary here. Here are the main points with citations to each article. I can see exactly what they're referring to, and also how many sites are there, how many confirming, how many just mentioning, how many contrasting. The categories are going to vary by nature of the project of the research. So you will see different, like here, so this is the public claims evidence. You'll see different categories for different kinds of work you do. And over here on the right, as I mentioned, references. Here are the 18 articles that it ended up analyzing for this research. And here's the Boolean it came up with. And notice it turned my natural language searching into a full detailed Boolean search. And there we go. Okay. Yep, and I do need to wrap it up, sorry. So that's one interesting way to do this. And finally, settings are here, including what kind of model do I want? Do I want a fast, moderately intelligent model? Do I want a slow and deep thinking model? I can choose that. And then also, do I want to do a re-ranking of 25 or 50 or 100? I can choose how deep the re-ranking goes. Okay. Quickly wrapping it up, consensus, interesting. You do, here's my same search. It uses a kind of a binary, yes, no, maybe, possibly set of hits. And so most of the articles are agreeing that there is some social mobility problems with adolescents, depression, anxiety. Some are more mixed, some say no. This is obviously a good discussion opening summary. It's not that scientific, right? Because articles don't necessarily say yes or no. They're much more nuanced than that. The methodologies vary, the sample size varies. It's treating them all the same. So this is interesting. It's hardly conclusive. You don't want to use this data in your publication probably, but for exploring literature, for discussing issues, it's a good starting point. That's my opinion on that. Okay, sorry, I know we're at time. I mentioned this briefly. Basically, with MCP servers, you use your own agent, usually through one of the commercial LMs, to connect with these tools. So I'm using, like for example, I can connect, I've done this already, ChatGPT, which I actually don't use that much, with Scite, and I can interview Scite and Scite's open ALEX and Semantic Scholar content to inform me on articles only through the ChatGPT interface, and use any other functionality from that search tool, that AI in my process. And we will eventually be able to do this also with Zotero and PubMed and other tools there. And sorry, looking at the clock. Recommendations. As you saw, I use Consensus for free. You can use these tools for free. Just mostly at some point you run out of free searches or it wants you to pay to download things. So you can try it, use as much as you can. It's good to know how they work. Number 2, so explore that, look at their videos, see how they rank and re-rank articles. If you're exploring new topics to you a lot, semantic searching is great. You saw my example of Scite and Consensus where it gives you a summary, it gives you an answer, right? You don't necessarily want to use that for core scholarship, but for exploring ideas and new things, that's useful. Number 4, I already mentioned, if you're doing systematic review, meta reviews, you got to be very careful to have transparent and reproducible results. These tools often don't do that because they're doing semantic conceptual searching, not straightforward locked Boolean searching. And then remember, some library databases already do this too. You don't have to necessarily pay to do article summaries because like ProQuest does that, or JSTOR also does summarizing topics for you. So that's something to consider there as well. That was super fast. I'm so sorry. But let me ask you, and I'll look at chat as well to see if you have any questions or comments or anything else you want to say. I'm looking back at chat now.
I put links to stuff just in case people had to go right at 12:30, but I can stay on, of course, for a little bit for the conversation. But I have a question. You were talking about like systematic reviews, reproducible searches. And this was really useful, but do you think that this kind of changes how you've been teaching library resources? And what do you think is one of the biggest difference between this and like library databases? which, are including some AI tools now and natural language processing for, when you talk to students or faculty in
Yep.
that way.
Sam, that's a great question. And potentially we could get a really active discussion about this. But the trend seems to be that Boolean is becoming less useful as a system of searching. The databases are too large, too much full text, too much citation analysis to rely purely on the binary nature of Boolean, right? Boolean means, are these words in the article? If they are, you get it. If they aren't, you don't. Even if there is a good article that may use different language and maybe totally on topic, but just using a different synonym, if that synonym is not in your Boolean search, you don't see the article. It's gone. I mean, it just never shows up. So Boolean, I frankly am particularly for undergraduates who just have always struggled with doing good Boolean searches. I'm more likely to use a good natural language search such as EBSCO now provides, or Scite does, instead of Boolean. The other question is re-rankings. That's really what we need now is better ranking tools, not just how many times does your keyword show up in the article. There's no context there. It's just say, okay, in this article, you typed in this keyword, it shows up 20 times. So you're going to be on top. This article is the #1 article. Is it really? I mean, it uses your keyword, but is the context there? Is the meaning there? So we need to push our vendors to do better with re-ranking. But quick answer to your question is, yeah, Boolean is no longer necessarily, the king or the queen, the royalty of searching, even though so much of our instruction, our videos or tutorials, how we teach our students, grad students particularly, is rooted in Boolean. We've been using Boolean now for 30 years or more. That may have to change at some point. We'll see. Okay, Karen, then Tiffany.
Yeah, I don't know your opinion of this, but I guess I've been when I start in PubMed, a lot of times I do use natural language. I
Okay.
always call it my down and dirty. And then it does the same thing. It does show you what the Boolean is after, but I don't know if PubMed's really designed to do that. I'm sure it's not, except I do find that it's a pretty good starting point, like you said, just to map the literature.
Yeah.
So that was just a bit of a comment. And then the other thing, I was curious, since you said Boolean may be going out of favor, but again, when you're talking about truly like a systematic review,
Yes.
or something that you want published, right, in that type of secondary literature analyses, have you any thought of if journals are going to change those requirements? I mean, we have Prisma, we have the JBI, we have, most of the time they want protocols registered. And the whole point of this, if you're truly doing it as secondary research, it does need to be reproducible. So I don't know if you hear anything out there in the world, if publishers or journals are going to change their requirements for those publications.
Yeah, Karen, thank you. Excellent points and a good question there too. Yeah, PubMed is actually, even, it's a government tool. National Library Health, or Leah and Sam both use PubMed too for their liaison roles. I do sometimes actually for economics. Has wonderful subject headings, the mesh headings, as you know, and the natural language search does leverage the mesh headings, and that makes that a powerful tool. And also PubMed has a newish two-stage ranking system. So it is good about getting beyond simply the Boolean binary searching where it's yes or no, you're in or out. So yeah, PubMed is really quite sophisticated, even though it's also a free government database. They're really on top of things too. Second question, yeah, absolutely. We need to be very careful about med reviews and systematic reviews. Boolean searching remains the main way to do those, and what we have to do. I'm not trying to in any way, rush off Boolean too quickly or in a non-nuanced fashion. However, there may sometime be some good standards for semantic conceptual searching that can be reproducible and may someday be an alternative to strict Boolean for systematic reviews where reproducibility is essential and vital. So yeah, Boolean still essential. That hasn't changed. Someday maybe less essential. So Karen, is that a good kind of hazy answer to your question?
Yeah. I think, like anything, right? Things evolve, science evolves. So
yeah, it does.
It's good to be aware of this, and then, it'll probably, slowly evolve to maybe how to do that. And if you can do that, conceptual searching, again, the big thing is reproducibility. So I'm sure some really smart people will figure out how to do it this way and make it you know, reproducible. Yeah.
We shall see. Good. Thank you. All right, Tiffany, please.
Yes, thank you. And that brings me to my question. Awesome segue. I am thinking about how have you even started, like how we write abstracts, because we are doing those abstract keywords based on that Boolean type, search that. So I'm wondering if some of these AI can be useful in finding the major concepts or mesh data that helps us change the keywords in our abstracts so that they'll be added for the concepts that we're looking for with some of these. And that's kind of where I'm thinking, because I'm thinking about, dissertation writing, article writing. I'm even looking at open evidence, what we teach our students to use to look at how they train for healthcare. And we're looking at getting nursing journals and open evidence. How do you bring the evidence where it's easily searchable for what you're looking for? How do you bring those keywords so that AI understands that this is for cardiovascular disease and women that are pregnant on so instead of all that plus. So I'm just wondering if that could be maybe a session that we explore, how we could,
that's a good,
make
good idea,
abstracts
Tiffany.
more impactful.
Yeah, and I'm sure Sam is writing it down probably as the host of our workshops too. Some of the tools do provide some really nifty filters, including like what kind of methodology are you using? So obviously those that have, and I think Elicit is one, I didn't have time for that, sorry. Consensus might do this too, actually. So those are searches where or tools rather, where the full content of the article has been thoroughly analyzed and noted what kind of methodology they use, right? Which might be mentioned in the abstract, but largely it might even mention like sample size, like n equals what, if that's that kind of research project. But the ability to do full text analysis of an article, not just the abstract and citation analysis, does lend itself to much more powerful search methods, including what kind of methodology to use. So that is a good topic. There, as you may know, ProQuest and some of these other tools do provide a summary of the article that's separate and often side by side to the abstract. And so sometimes we librarians say, why do we need this summary? We already have the abstract is a summary, right? But like you noted, the abstract exists in part to load up Boolean keyword choices, right? To bring up, all the core concepts, but also make sure that keywords are there to support traditional keyword searching, where the title, the author, the journal, and the abstract is what you get, and that's it. We're getting past that point now. So yeah, Tiffany, the future of the abstract, its value of the abstract, it is a good question, because it could be changing the nature and the value of it. So thank you. Tiffany, was that a good response? I mean, you gave us wisdom.
Yes, because
so I don't really have, an answer, but I wanted to.
I'm teaching these young scholars in graduate school to look, this is what I'm teaching them, this evidence-based research and how you do these scoping reviews and this type of thing. And I'm just like, this totally changes the game a little bit. I mean, how can we make our writing better to make sure that's just like we teach, resumes. How do we get our resumes so that AI will find it so it'll actually land into the people that need it? So same thing with the abstracts. How do we make them better using the tools that we have? So thank you for that.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for your comments. And Karen adds, EndNote now also has a summarization tool where you can, like I mentioned, I showed in one was it SMEX? I forget now. Sorry, I'm getting tired from this whirlwind discussion. But to basically chat with an article, interview an article. And I think that's a powerful thing as well, seeing a summary of the article. Good, thank you. Any other comments, thoughts, wisdom, feedback, questions?
Okay, I think this was great. I learned a lot. Steve put his email in the chat. And so I would definitely say that I think a lot of y'all's librarians are here because I see there's a good amount from nursing. If you're in other areas, also feel free to reach out to your liaison librarian. You're welcome to ask us if you don't know who it is. Leah's nursing, she's here. I am some in HHS, some education, some I'm scattered. And Steve's offering to follow up with anyone. And thank you all for coming. This was great. I think I'm going to keep all of this in the recording for YouTube since there was a great conversation. So thanks, Steve. I'm not going to turn my camera on in case I'm blue. again. But thank you all for coming. Have a great week. And hopefully I'll see some of y'all for governance indexes tomorrow. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you, friends.
Thanks.
Thank you, Sam. Good luck with it.